Kingdoms rise and empires crumble, and the knowledge and wisdom from past ages are lost to the foggy ruins of time. But for genuine seekers of truth, one place stands alone on a hill, shining brightly in the darkness. You, dear listener, have reached the Hidden Citadel.
Hey, I'm sick. Welcome to the Hidden Citadel.
He's got his blues voice on.
I got the blues voice on, yeah. We're going to be late night blues with Willie and
John Lee
Greg.
Hooker.
That's right. You know, we could do a whole show on blues legends
Yeah.
and like mysteries surrounding
'Cause there's
disappearing
lots.
guitars and the crossroads. We could talk about like home recipes that are the best chili recipes. I don't
And
know
co-
where.
and compromised love relationships that happen a lot with blues.
That's true. Yeah, there's a lot of that. Yeah,
I think those are all
my
the lyrics.
baby. We'll just name the episode "My Baby Done Left Me."
We do. I saw a comedian once. He goes, I've gotten into John Lee Hooker recently. I listened to all his songs, and from what I can tell, the guy's had some lady problems.
Like just a couple. Yeah, you can put any blues artist name in there pretty much.
Yeah.
I like
Maybe not Mayer, but yeah.
Yeah, I was letting my students listen to BB King the other day, and one of the students was like, "What is this crap?" And I was like, "What is wrong with you? This is BB King."
Early BB King is so much different from later BB King.
That's true.
You just early you're like, wow, what is this? Later on, you got used to his sayings. He got
sober.
Yeah, he got just very similar. Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
It's just like, you kind of knew what his phrase was going to be, and it's still
It was
him.
always ba-da-bump, ba-da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
Ba-da-ba-da.
Bend
Yeah.
up, bend down.
Yeah. But who could do it that way,
Yeah.
I saw a video of him teaching. There was an interview video on guitar techniques.
Mm-hmm.
And he said the two most important techniques that he could pass on were learn how to mute notes that you don't want to ring out.
Oh.
And he said that amateur players, a lot of times, you'll hear other notes in there that really don't belong. And he said, and then the second thing is learn how to do butterfly vibrato. And he said, practice it with every finger.
I've seen him do that. Yeah.
And he said, I can do it with each finger, which you think of him, like whenever I do butterfly vibrato, it's almost always with my first finger. But he would do it even with his pinky sometimes.
Huh.
But I kind of move back and forth between his vibrato style and Eric Clapton's vibrato, where you just hold the guitar and let the neck kind of move up and down while you play. Well, what do you use usually?
Let me think. I think mine's more like I can't think of an artist that I've really gotten a vibrato from. The one I aspire to is John Sykes from Whitesnake.
Oh yeah,
because it's so wide and so aggressive. So like if you're doing a pinch harmonic, that thing can
you can make that sing forever.
I can call a boat in from like
That's
Jamaica.
True. That guy was amazing.
Yeah.
We were talking about Def Leppard the other day, and Trevor was like, "Why would they put?" We were watching a BBC show.
Okay.
And they had Def Leppard on there just randomly. Normally they have like new wave stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And Trevor was like, she loves new wave music. I mean, that's kind of her thing.
Mm-hmm.
And she's
I remember. Yeah.
Why would they put Def Leppard on here? And I said, because they're British and this show takes place where they're from.
Yeah.
And she's like, they're not British. And I was like, yes, Yes, they were. She's like,
Oh,
that is not British music. That's American music. And I was like, no, I'm serious. I said, they were
yeah,
British.
yeah.
All those hair bands were British.
The only
And
guy that
then they
there's
came
only,
to America.
yeah, there's only one guy that wasn't British later on. That was Vivian Campbell. He was
Yeah.
Irish.
Well, and then the later hair bands like Guns N' Roses, but isn't Slash British?
No,
No, he's not. Somebody in that band.
he's from
No.
California.
Yeah, that's right.
He
But he
was
was in a band with a bunch of Brits
uh,
before, right?
Velvet
L.A.
Revolver.
Gun,
Yeah,
maybe. Yeah, I don't know. But
Velvet
all the other
Revolver.
guys were
Yeah,
from Indiana.
yeah.
But but anyway, I was like, yeah, no, those early hair bands were all Brits, you know.
A lot of them were. Yeah,
But I don't know. Then there was another show we watched that they had a bunch of Rory Gallagher music, and I was like, I
very.
had never really listened to his stuff much, but Jordan's uncle, my son-in-law's uncle,
Mhm.
invited me to. I can't go this year, but invited me this year to go to the Rory Gallagher Festival
Mhm.
in Rory's hometown, which somewhere in Ireland.
Mhm.
And maybe next year I can work that out and go because I think that would be really neat to. He's
Oh,
having blues people that come from all over the world to play at that festival,
I've heard of that. Yeah.
and he does the sound for it. So he was like, you could come and do the sound. He said maybe I could even get you on to play, for it. I was like, that'd be awesome. So
Wow.
I'd like to do that. I just, couldn't do it this year. But, but that's not what we're talking about.
No, I forgot that we're on the Citadel.
We're talking about, yeah, right. We're talking about Davy Jones and the Flying Dutchman and
That-
ocean mysteries.
That's yes. It is. In looking at the YouTube thing you sent me, it just opened up a variety of like tentacles that in every direction. I'm thinking, wow, where does this kind of come from? Where, like, what is the archetype here? What is where does he fit in mythology? There's a lot of things. There's certainly
I know.
one of the just surface level. um if the Davy Jones who owned the pub, was it a pub or
Yes.
if all right, that was like just a garden variety serial killer. It
Yep.
was like John Wayne Gacy or something. This guy, for those of you who don't know, he owned like a pub, and it was in England, I believe.
Yep.
And he would get his patrons drunk until they passed out. Then he'd shove them in a locker, and
Hmm.
then he'd sell them to ships who needed extra workers. And so while they're asleep, while they're out, he would sell them, and they essentially, like, they go and um so that the ships would they'd end up on a boat, like, nope, you're working here, you're working for us, you're on a boat, you can't leave, kind of thing.
Shanghai.
Yes. And then after he left there, after he's I'm not sure if he sold the place or he was kicked out or whatever happened to his pub. Then he ended up stealing a ship and becoming a pirate, becoming and but he was not just
It's
like
crazy.
but he wasn't just like, garden variety pirate. He was beheading his own staff. He would do. Did you say, what's it called? Keel something?
Keel hauling.
Keel hauling. Taking a guy, putting weights on him, dropping him under the keel, and dragging him up the other side.
Yeah.
I mean, what part of pirate? Like, I've read the pirate books.
Oh,
The
keel
pirate
hauling
hand.
is a big deal.
No, I'm just
So
saying the pirate handbook. There's no that doesn't benefit anybody.
if you read or if you are a fan of the show and you want to go deep, you can go check out the Fantastic Flying Frog song, "The Captain's Daughter," where I
Ooh,
go back and forth between saying keel haul and kill haul as kind of a play on you're not getting out once you've been keel hauled.
wow.
You're pretty
Yes.
much hurting. But
Yeah.
there's we might as well talk about this too. There's an old child ballad called The Golden Vanity.
Mhm.
And the story of the Golden Vanity, I can't remember which number the ballad is, but the Golden Vanity was Sir Walter Raleigh's ship. And when he allegedly came across in one of his trips the Turkish revelry, in some versions and some others, it was some other Spanish ship, basically was chasing them and was gaining ground. And Raleigh said, and I live in North Carolina, so he's like, everything's named after him. But
Yeah.
Raleigh said, if anybody will figure out a way to get this ship off our tail, I will give you my all this money and my daughter's hand in marriage. And so the cabin boy says, "Oh, I can do it," and he dives off. Well, they oiled him up in like lard or something so that the water wouldn't freeze him. And he dives into the water, swims over to the ship, and he takes an auger and he augers 9 holes in the side of the ship, and then he swims back. And when he gets back, he's like exhausted. The other ship's starting to sink, and Raleigh says, "Well, I have no intention of actually letting my daughter marry a cabin boy," so they just left him there and sailed away. In other versions of the song, the crew threatens to mutiny, so they haul the cabin boy up onto the deck, and he dies of exhaustion from. But then he like curses Raleigh or something for leaving him in the sea too long. So there's several versions of it. One of my favorites is Crooked Still has a really good version called The Golden Vanity. Bob Dylan did it. Joan Baez. A lot of people did that song, but yeah.
That's great, but it's still like that. It's kind of like the Den of Thieves.
Yeah.
If you are with pirates, you have to assume everything you do. Like
Well,
it's
and
always going to be
Raleigh
a
was
lot.
sanctioned, but a lot of those people could be sanctioned and still be like a pirate.
But you can't trust anybody. It
No.
doesn't. The Den of Thieves. Nobody can trust each other. Like
No.
that's you know what I mean.
It's,
It's like it's the what do you call it? The paradox. The
yeah.
not
I
Zeno's paradox, but one of those where I think it was Socrates that said the men of
Johnny
Crete.
Depp's paradox.
Well, the men of Crete, where you say all Cretans are liars. If someone
Oh
from
yeah.
Crete says, "I'm telling you something," you can't be sure that
Yeah.
any that they say is true. Even if they say I'm from Crete, then you're like,
Yeah. You
so that
can't.
paradox becomes a. So it's the same thing with the pirates and the Den of Thieves. It's like well this guy who was all larded up,
Yeah.
and the agreement that he made, he had to now that we're looking back, he had to assume that it wasn't going to be fulfilled because you can't
Exactly.
trust anybody on that.
Nope. No, well, the point was a lot of these ship captains like Raleigh or Captain Kidd,
Mhm.
they weren't really pirates, but they were like an inch away from being one.
Yeah,
And they had this thought process that I am the king of this vessel, and what I say is God's law.
yeah.
And Captain Kidd was a normal captain until one day he grabbed a bucket and came upside somebody's head and killed the guy. And then when he got back to England, they hanged him. Or I think that he found out that he was going to be hanged, and then he ran and became a pirate. And then when they caught him again, then they hanged him. And but it was all because he murdered one of his crew, and he said, "I'm the captain." That was his defense in court. Was I'm the captain? I'm allowed to murder anybody on my crew if I want to.
It
That's
becomes
the law.
it becomes its own like city state, its own like little kingdom. You're right, because there's nothing
Yeah.
you have, and you have to put such force in place and have something that you're either more powerful than everybody, or you have to have a cadre of people that are
Hmm.
mind guarded enough to know don't there's no mutiny against me or
Yeah.
else. And then
Well, there was
that
one pirate. I think it was Jack Rackham. No, it wasn't Jack Rackham. I can't remember which one it was, but he had a contract with his crew.
mhm,
If you will serve with me, these are the fair rations. You have to read your Bible every day. We're
mhm,
not having gambling and loose women on the ship. He had a whole list of rules that
mhm.
he was like the most gentlemanly pirate of them all. But
What a paradox.
here here's the thing about the Golden Age of Piracy. And it goes back to the madness of King George. And I wrote about this in my book, The Mandolin Sea Shanties. And, yeah, it's the Mandolin Dead Man's Tuning Sea Shanty Edition.
Mm-hmm.
And King George was insane. And nobody really knows exactly what his malady was, but it was a physical illness that he had. One of the symptoms was his pee would turn blue.
Oh.
And people were like, what is causing that? Well, eventually he overcame his illness, but he was an old man at this time, and he had like 40 years of being pretty much insane. And so when he went to war against Spain and the Spanish Armada, they were shanghaiing and recruiting as many sailors as they could get to be Navy men. And they were blockading the Spanish for a long time. Well, 20 years or so into this, he suddenly makes peace with Spain, and they said, well, how are we going to keep paying all of these sailors? And now we've got the biggest navy in the world, but we don't have enough gold coming in. He says, oh, that's easy. Give me some parchment. And he writes an edict, and he signs it. Now everybody who was in the Navy is now a pirate. And so any port they show up to, hunt them down and kill them and hang them.
Wow.
That was his solution to having too many Navy people. And so a lot of these guys, like this one guy that I can't remember his name, he started out as a ship captain in the Navy. And then the next day they're like, oh, by the way, you're a pirate now. It's like, okay, well, if I got to be a pirate, these are the rules of my ship.
Yeah, it ends up being kind of like prison. You end up going in there, and then you have to find protection. You have to find a way to just manage the day to day, because you become a target, or you become, you're already under suppression in a way. Something is pushing you down, and so you're just fighting to stay up. And in doing so, you become most likely aggressive and most likely deceptive.
Well, and the things that you could be punished by, be cat of nine tails, chained in the belly of the ship, keel hauled, walking the plank. There's just so many things that could have happened that being, and then just some of the work that you have to do, being suspended off the side of the ship on a rope, scraping barnacles off the side. I scraped barnacles off of a ship with Captain Rob, and I'm telling you, those things are like little razors on the sides of the ship. And it's like you're over there with a little spatula, popping those things off. And that's not a fun job to do. Depending on the weather, you could be freezing one day and really hot the next. It's like it wasn't a good life being a pirate,
Wait, I just realized who you sound like. You sound like Randall Carlson. Say something about Younger Dryas.
Oh yes, it's we're entering the Younger Dryas period now, even, and it's still going on. In fact, we might have a flood next week. You never know.
You sound just like him. Younger Dryas.
The Younger Dryas. That's what it is. Oh, but I should drink some more of my tea, and maybe that will help me.
So, it's interesting. So you go through like all the components of Davy Jones, from perhaps being the I don't know, the kidnapping pub owner, to pirate, to serial killer,
monkeys.
But like I really like the mythology of the whole thing. Like, first of all, the locker being the bottom of the sea, and the locker kind of not only being a place where something is kept like treasure, but also being synonymous with a coffin. You go to the bottom of the sea.
Now a coffin.
You listen to the coffin that is that Davy Jones's tuberculosis. So you have, but it's just kind of like the bottom of the sea being the locker, and it's like you don't get a land. You don't have a land-based Sheol death. You
Yeah,
are in the
right.
depths, and so
Well, and isn't it
it's
interesting in the Bible at the end times it says the grave will give up its dead and then the sea will give up its dead.
mm,
It's like it's a different entity, kind of like the idea of Poseidon, you know, is an entity that's in
mm,
charge of the sea. Somebody else is in charge of the land, you know. But did you get to the point where I don't know if it was on that video, but they said that they thought that Davy Jones might not actually be a name. It could be derived from the devil Jonah or Jonas, which goes back to Jonah the
yeah,
prophet. And I was like, dude, that's pretty interesting that
that's
it
pretty
could
wild.
possibly date all the way back to Jonah's time, and sailors are like, hey, you know, Jonah got swallowed. The funny thing is, those sailors could have been telling their version of Jonah forever, and you know, well, there was this guy named Jonah, and he got swallowed by a fish. You don't
Yeah,
want to end up like him
yeah,
because they don't know the rest of the story.
yeah.
You know,
And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, just
well,
fragments of things were carried, whether in song
yeah,
or in
yeah.
just yeah.
Or get this, how does it tie in with Dagon being a fish god and the high head god of the Ninevites?
Wow.
You know, and so if this prophet is spit out of Dagon and God Yahweh has control over Dagon,
Hmm.
you know, to spit Jonah out and send him to preach, that's a pretty powerful message in their eyes too.
That's why it's interesting because the fish, in order for there's somebody to be within the fish, there has to be enough room within the fish, and
Yeah,
and I would imagine it's interesting because I was reading. I want to say it's John. Is it John? I'm trying to think where it is where Mary and Martha they run to the tomb
yeah,
to see this and it says they stooped down to look in. And I was thinking, cause I always picture like it's you go across to go in, but
mm-hmm,
it was a descent into, and
yeah,
so it was kind of like cavernous. It was kind of like
yeah,
as much as there's a stone that was rolled toward the entrance was also you're going down into, and you have
yeah,
to. So you almost think of like the fish itself must have been cavernous for two reasons. One, to allow enough room for Jonah, but two, to allow something living to be maintained. I mean, because he was breathing,
true.
I assume, or
Yep.
he was dead and then resurrected. One of the
Well,
two.
I think that you, in fact, it was just last week I read an article about a guy off the coast of Chile or Peru or somewhere over in there got swallowed by a big fish. And they caught the fish and got the guy out before, you know, he suffocated or anything. But
Wow.
depending on the size of the fish, there can be enough water trapped, I mean, enough air trapped in there, just like when a ship sinks. Sometimes people have been trapped in ships for days
Hmm.
that have sunk because there are air pockets that they can breathe. I think there was a ship that I heard about. It was in World War II, I think. It got torpedoed and then it sank, and it was like 5 or 6 days before somebody could get to rescue the people. No, it wasn't that one. It was the it was a Swedish ship, I think, is the one I'm thinking of, where it went down and then the Russians had to come and help save the people and they were trapped down. Or I could be conflating a couple different accounts, but I've heard several of these stories where people are down there and they're down there for a while, you know, because of the air pockets. And you could have that in the belly of a really big fish too.
It's funny because there's a theory with Noah's Ark that the animals were like in hibernation.
Hmm.
Everything just slowed down, so they required less to
Yeah,
be able to just to live. And it's almost like, what if it were like that?
yeah.
Jonah's body went into almost hibernation, so it required less air, it required less everything.
Well, and he's fasting. And
And it's
whenever
faster.
you're, because you can't
Yeah.
eat,
Mm-mm.
so whenever you're in a state like that, your body metabolism naturally slows down anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
But that's really
Um,
interesting about them thinking Davy Jones is like a
Corruption of that, yeah.
yeah, yeah. I just to have that. It's interesting too, just that it because there's always just the mystery of the deep, and it's just almost you have to have a personification of the mystery of the deep. You have to have somebody down there. You have to have something. It can't just be like the chaotic depths. You have to have
No,
a master over it. And
but there is the people who have cited the Flying Dutchman,
yes,
and that's an interesting thing in and of itself. I have a story. My friend Bonnie was a Navy tugboat operator when she was in the Navy.
hmm
And she said she was on a boat called the Cochecton, I forget how you pronounce it. But anyway, she was on her boat one night with a couple other people in the Navy, and all the people on the boat saw, this was off the coast of California, they saw an old fashioned ship, all black, with ghostly looking people on the ship in old time 1700s outfits come sailing out of the fog, and they just watched it for like 10 or 15 minutes, and the people on the ship watched them. They could see each other basically. And then like somebody waved, and then somebody waved back, kind of a deal. And then all of a sudden it just sailed off into the fog again and disappeared. And she was like, I couldn't hear anything, like we couldn't hear noises that they were making or anything. But she said it was there just as visible as you could see it.
mm,
And so it's like that's kind of similar to some of the other. And one of the sightings of the Flying Dutchman was from a prince or a king or somebody had sighted it. And it's like that's a pretty interesting, you know, um, what most people would consider a fairly credible source, except for King George. But other kings, have been fairly credible in the past, and he claimed to have seen the Flying Dutchman.
does the legend of Davy Jones include that kind of like he has a kingdom there that in order to either um, have an eternity of peace or not or to be able to escape from or be set free from, you have to like offer him something, like is there something like
Yeah,
that?
there's something like that that goes with it, and I can't remember. The Disney movie played that up, but I don't think it's that in the original Legends. I think it wasn't like as big of a deal as it became in the Disney movie,
Hmm.
But I think there was something to that Davy Jones was functioning in a way similar to the Fairy Queen when she captured Tam Lin
Yeah.
and had to pay a tithe to hell. That Davy Jones, in order to keep operating, he had to give his tithe of souls. They got to work for so long on his ship, and then he had to turn them over to the devil, you know, which, in a way, flies in the face of Christian doctrine,
Yeah.
because if you are a Christian, you basically go to be with the Father.
Hmm.
But we don't know what happens to those lost souls. Maybe if somebody is lost, that there are entities that are wanting to take advantage of souls in that state.
That's interesting because the two we brought up before, but you have the ghost of Samuel, and then but
Mm-hmm.
also you have the whatever this was, that there was a fight between Michael the archangel and Satan
Over
over
Moses.
Moses' body. And it's like, what is that? Like, what is, is it the
I don't
body? It's
know.
the physical body itself was so inhabited with the supernatural that there was a power to it, or was it very much like you said? upon his death, there's a fight to try to
Well, okay.
to kind of own that
What
entity.
if when a body dies, there's a moment that a demon could, not a body dies, but when a person dies
Hmm.
and the spirit departs the body,
Hmm.
what if at the very moment of death, a demon could enter in and inhabit the body? We would never be able to know one way or the other because if a person, if that happened and the demon took over the role of the person, all
Hmm.
you would notice is, well, there's a big personality change after so and so's near death experience, which we do have record of that. There have been a lot of near death experiences where people completely and utterly change, either for the good or for the ill,
Hmm.
after a near death experience. Well, if a demon has the ability to do that, maybe Satan wanted to do that and wanted to inhabit Moses' body so that he could undo everything that God just did.
That's a good point. That's really interesting.
You
That's really
know,
interesting.
I think that needs further fleshing out, but,
Yeah, yeah, and that would make sense. That's really interesting because Moses was the turning point. Um, God used him, to set the captives free, to usher in his, his people, to bring his people to his land, you
mm-hmm.
know, to Moses was the supernatural conqueror of all that with all like all the gods. God, remember?
Of Egypt, he
Yeah,
struck them all down.
yeah.
Oops. And
So it's like, if I was ruler of the other kingdom, I'd be pissed. I'd be like,
I
I'm
know,
if I can get this guy and reverse all this because you know,
yeah,
everything was mine. It's really,
it,
I still think the thing that's still, Heiser talks about how the sea is a place of chaos. It's just a place of
yep,
unknown, and it's an expanse that is almost, pardon the pun, unfathomable. But it's like
yeah,
it's just too much to consider. But then again, it also has a sense, in scripture that there's a beast that comes out of the sea. There's
the
there's a lot to,
Leviathan, yeah.
but well, yeah, is that the one in Revelation? Is the beast? Isn't there one?
Oh, I'm thinking of Job, but you're right. The
Yeah.
beast that does come out of the sea.
But then you have, just in the when creation happened, there's a strange verse that the waters were separated from the land, and there's a
Mm-hmm.
boundary that was put in between, so that the sea could never harm the land.
Mm-hmm.
You look at that. I want to say it's like the New Living Translation, but it's just really interesting that it's phrased that way. That
Yeah.
So what is it that the sea? I mean, the sea obviously has a lot of power to it, but but in a way, the land is where you know life is, and God has will walk,
Yep.
and the kingdoms will be, and that sort of thing. But it's also, the sea is important to have a role of either containing
Yeah.
or promoting
Well,
chaos.
I find the phrase when God caused the flood to happen,
Hmm.
and then it was all done. He said, "Never again will I flood the earth with water, but next time I will destroy the earth by fire."
Hmm.
And it's like, well, wait a minute. It almost seems to me, and maybe I'm reading into it too much, but to say I'm never doing this again
Hmm.
almost implies that he's done it more than once.
That's interesting. That's
And
really
so
interesting. Yeah.
then I think about things like Atlantis,
Yep.
and it's like, okay, well, if Poseidon founded Atlantis and Poseidon was a fallen angel
Hmm.
or a watcher or a Nephilim
Hmm.
of some sort, then it's like, okay, maybe God, if not totally, partially flooded, you know, we if the reshot structure is Atlantis or what Atlantis was,
Hmm.
then it's like, okay, that makes sense that God used water to wipe stuff out before. I thought in my mind, and we may have talked about this before, but it always seemed to me that, well, if the flood came and wiped everything out, well, how could you ever come back? And why do you have things like Mitzrayim, the Egypts before the flood,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have Mitzrayim after the flood? And it's like, okay, well, one thing could be that they're just referring to it by its modern name and saying that area where Egypt is, that was before the flood too.
Mm.
Or the other thing is, after I saw the flooding in North Carolina this last year, I was like, oh, a flood doesn't necessarily completely and utterly get rid of everything, because there's lots of stuff that can still be sticking out of the ground
Mm-hmm.
that now they're digging some of that stuff back out to
Yeah.
reuse it. And it's like, well, if structures were built before Noah's flood and the global flood came through and wiped everything out, well, they could have looked around and said, oh, let's dig this out and see what was there. And also, that sort of ties in with the idea that I wanted to throw out there too, is what if the Egyptians or the Romans or Solomon made it to America before Columbus,
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like there does seem to be some strange evidence that there were possibly Egyptians in the Grand Canyon. There
Yep.
seems to be some Romans that were in the Mississippi Valley area and
Mm-hmm.
also in South America. And
Mm-hmm.
then there seems to be some Hebraic writings in different places that looks like it dates from the time of Solomon. Some people say all that's a hoax, but a lot of other people say no, it's not a hoax. And of course, isn't it just like most scholars to just label something a hoax right off the bat anyway,
Oh,
whether it is or not?
yeah, yeah. I mean, and or the other thing is, it feels like the Smithsonian's always involved. It
Somehow, yeah.
something comes up and like, yeah, shut it down. Nobody
Yep.
go, nobody goes in here.
Well, I knew a guy that I'm not blaming the Smithsonian, but some people have blamed the Smithsonian for this. I knew one of the guys that discovered the fossils in Texas where the footprint of the dinosaur was over top of the
A
footprint of a
human foot.
man.
Yeah.
And he had the pictures and he showed me all that stuff way back in the early 80s. And he came to our church and gave a lecture. Well, you can't go and look at that now because somebody has gone and chiseled all that up. In the middle of the night, they destroyed that whole site. And it's like, well, now, why would they do that? And some people claim, well, the Smithsonian sent somebody in to demolish that. And it's like, well, somebody was stupid and demolished it.
It's like Stephen Jay Gould. He's like,
Yeah,
no, we can't have that.
can't have that. Yeah.
But I still, so like, remember Gary Wayne said, there's there's always a copy of, it does, it's really interesting. You could always say on earth as it is with heaven, on earth as it is in heaven. But like he always says, it's a copy. Whatever God's doing, there's a antithesis to that, a copy of that.
Yep.
That occurs. So what would Davy Jones be a copy of? Would he be a Moses? Is he traveling, containing, holding back? Like, instead of setting people free, he's holding them more and more captive, trying to bring them down to where he is, rather than being the one that brings them to the promised place. Does he contain them for, like, what would he be a copy of? A replicant.
Yeah. Well, I think you could see him a couple different ways. If he's somebody that's doomed to wander the earth,
Yeah.
the seas, he's kind of another version of the wandering Jew in a way.
Or Cain. Yeah.
Cain, the
Mm-hmm.
wanderer, where he's cursed to go and wander in the land of Nod.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely, and some people think that Cain was the wandering Jew. Or
Right.
some people say, no, the wandering Jew was, I can't remember his name, but he was some guy that poked fun at Jesus when Jesus was carrying the cross. And so there's different versions of that story. But yeah, he could be the sea version of a Cain, basically. But then on the other hand, if you get into he's a minion that's supposed to capture souls for Satan, then maybe he could be Poseidon even. If Poseidon
Yeah.
is an actual entity,
Yeah.
then why not make himself look like in the golden age of seafaring match up with what people look like from that time period, you know?
It's interesting because when you have the argument for Yahweh as being there was no other God before him or after him. He is, there's no Elohim like God, like Yahweh, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So then the inversion of that would be that there are many of everything, of all
Yeah.
kinds of evil Elohim,
Yeah.
because
Exactly.
because that phrase, you need that there's only one to combat what you needed to combat that there are
The
others
many.
many. All right, so then you're looking at, all right, what are they? Well, then you and like just like the Egyptian gods, then you're kind of looking at, okay, well, like Baba Yaga is,
Yeah.
goes and captures children and takes them to a place. Then you might have Davy Jones captures and keeps them. Then you might have different
That's
physical,
true.
So in other words, we could probably look throughout mythology and find that's almost like they have different dominions. They
Yeah.
have different thrones, different places that these things occupy in order
Well,
to try to either develop a religion, a counter religion, or just completely contaminate or obfuscate um, the Yahweh Christianity God and religion.
even with the alien abductions,
Yeah, another one of the
you've
space. Yeah,
got,
that'd
and
be of
then
the
you've got,
heavens.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then you've got the fairies that take people away and they have a good time while they're off there. But then you have some alien stories where they're taken off with the aliens. The aliens are really nice to them and they
Mm.
pretend to be, believers too or whatever. And it's like there's a lot of stories of people being contained, even whether kindly or unkindly, by some other entity that is definitely not, human. And it's just another one of those guardian spirits, if we want to
Yeah.
call it that, like guardian of the air, guardian of the
Hmm.
sea, guardian of the
Yeah.
forest, sort of a thing.
Well,
Um,
Satan's
yeah.
called the prince of the powers of the air.
Yes, he
So,
is.
well, all right. So you have prince. I think that's what we focus on. But I
Well,
think we're missing out on the powers of the air. What are those powers? It can't just
but
be
if the
air.
purple rain starts falling, then you're
Yeah,
dealing with Prince.
yeah, you are. Things start looking paisley. Um,
Yes.
One thing, as a side note, I think every Hidden Citadel we should end with a new idea for a pedal for Josh Scott JHS pedals. And
Yes, we should.
today's pedal will be congestion.
Yes.
Like you stomp on, it's like a nice clean tone,
And
good
it's like
voicing. You
adding
hit it,
like way too
and
much
it sounds
compression.
like you need Mucinex. You're just
Yes.
like
Well, I
congestion.
did pitch Josh through their website. I pitched them the cat pedal to where you play it and everything you play sounds like a cat screaming. And then somebody else came up with that pedal.
Well, the
And
possession pedal that we came up with last time, where you
oh
sound like
yeah, there you
two different
go.
voices, like a creepy deep one and a high at
Yeah,
the same time.
that would
I
be
think
good
we're on to
too.
some. The
I
possession.
think
We
Josh
should.
should at least just send us some free pedals.
I think so. I think in exchange for our ideas, we
Yeah,
should
just
get
send
the
us a
entire
pedal.
the
Yeah,
little
the
white
cat.
series.
That's
I
right.
want the chorus.
There
I
you
want
go.
the delay. The
He makes
Citadel
cool
series.
pedals.
So the congestion and the
He should
possession.
do a Citadel series, yes.
Yeah,
So we got congestion and possession.
yeah. He hasn't done
Next,
any of those. Nobody has those.
yeah, next time we'll come up with something else that'll be really good too. Um, I
When you're
do,
healed.
yeah, when I'm healed. I do want to talk about St. Brendan though. We got to throw some Ireland in here.
Of course.
So what do you know anything about St. Brendan?
No.
So basically, when we were in Ireland, Trevor picked up this book where this Irish guy tried to reproduce St. Brendan's crossing from Ireland to the New World to see if he could have done it. So the legend is, once upon a time on the Hidden Citadel, there's a video where I went to Salem, New Hampshire, which is called the Stonehenge of America.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody knows who built it, where it came from. Some people speculate that St. Brendan maybe built it with his group of monks. And St. Brendan built a ship. It was a two-masted ship before anybody had two-masted ships. And it was, I think, a coracle. So it was a two-masted coracle, a round ship. And there's one tale about how they landed on an island, but it turned out not to be an island. It was a whale that, and they had almost wrecked the ship because the whale started moving and it almost pulled them down. But they got away from it, and eventually, I don't know if they made it all the way and then they came back to Ireland. I need to read the book, but the point was he was fired up about, I want to go see if there's other people out there that need to hear the gospel, and I'm going to go preach to them. I think he lived slightly after St. Patrick, like 400 to 500 A.D. And but yeah, he's such an interesting person. They call him St. Brendan the Navigator, and I really want to learn more about his life. I had thought maybe when you were over there, maybe you might have heard about him, but he's somebody we need to study some more about.
Yeah, I mean, I could have spent like 2 years there. Just there's so much there. It's amazing. All the, there's very nuanced elements there. Like just like you kind of think of like, all right, wow, like the masonry, the landscaping is, we don't get it right here in the United States. We need stuff redone after a year, and they have stuff that is still in place
5,000 years later.
Has less like chemistry and science to it, as far as like, made in a factory or anything like that, or clinical
crazy.
trial. And yet they figured it out. They're like, all right, the wind comes here. That's what takes away the strength of the rocks. So we're gonna tilt the rocks in such a direction that the wind and the weather is not going to harm them, and they're going to stay in place. And they've been there for 400 years. Yeah, it does.
I think that some rich people that listen to the Hidden Citadel should just, pitch in and send you and me and our wives back to Ireland for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
And we'll do a series, like a whole series of Irish Hidden Citadels, and we'll go around the country and talk about all sorts of weird stuff.
Oh, yeah.
On location. Speaking of on location, coming up in the near future in April, which by the time I record it, it'll probably be out in June or July.
Okay.
I'm going down to the Coral Castle, and we're going to have to do a Hidden Citadel tie-in somehow with the Coral Castle. And I'm going to film as much as I can while I'm there, and maybe even if I have internet, maybe we'll even just broadcast from there if I've got all the gear that I need to do it. But it'll be an interesting thing. If you don't know about the Coral Castle, it is so mysterious. So that'll be a fun one.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think we need to. We'll probably need to do two things here. One is look into a little bit more about Poseidon.
Yes.
And looking at those like the occupants and the kingdoms of the sea.
Yep.
I think we need to look at that. And then secondly, be on alert for our next JHS pedal.
Yeah.
That's priorities. We just got to have our priorities.
We just got to get them set right.
I think we need to tag them.
We got to tag him on all of these. I wonder if he's interested in weird stuff like we are.
I'll bet he is. I mean,
he's got to be.
He's one of us.
Guy.
Come on,
he has to be.
Just the way his fingers move,
I know.
Yeah. It's like it's not that one of my favorite things he said, because I've said it for years. One of the funniest lines in all of music is when in Rattle and Hum Bono goes, "Play the blues, Edge,"
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I say it all the time when I'm in bands. We're like, play the blues edge. But anyway, he had a line. I'll send you the clip. He had a line. He goes, he's reviewing Rattle and Hum. He goes, you know, Bono says play the blues edge. Edge plays something
It has
way far
nothing to
away
do
from
with the
nothing to
blues.
blue with the blues, but it's one of my favorite solos. It's like
You
playing the
know,
blues edge.
I love the song When Love Comes to Town.
Yeah,
It's so good. But when the Edge gets his turn to play a solo, he
yeah,
should have just not and just let BB play another solo because it
yeah.
was so bad. That solo that he played in that song is like, I almost want to fast forward it every time I hear it. It's like, here BB King is playing, and okay, 5-year-old, now it's your turn to play a
Here's
solo.
yeah. Take off your effects, and we'll hear the two notes that you know.
That's
So
right.
it's funny. When we were in Texas, we met this guy. Oh, I'm trying to think of his name, but he was the fan of the opera in Texas
Really?
when they the shows on their Broadway, wherever they play there.
Yeah.
He was a fan of them. But he lived around the corner from us when we this, and we were
Wow.
talking one time, and there was something came on, and I started singing it, and Audra looks at me, she goes, "You have the fan of the opera here. No one wants to hear you. Want to hear? If anybody's gonna sing here, it's just gonna be him, not
Not
you."
you.
And so that's like Edge and BB King. If anybody's gonna play guitar, it's gonna be BB King,
Yeah, not
not
the
Edge.
Edge.
Edge is really a technician.
He is, and the sounds that he gets are really, really cool as a
Yeah,
rhythm player.
yeah.
He's
And
got he's the coolest
overall,
rhythm player alive.
well, you could argue that modern Christian music does not exist right now. Like
Without
just the
the Edge.
ambient, yeah, without the Edge. I mean,
I
you can
totally
hear
believe that.
almost every song. You're like every Hill song. You're like, wow, there it is. It just
Yeah. And
it's
you know
all
what's weird
Edge.
is like everybody heard, oh, they're Christians. They weren't all Christians for one thing. For the other is like some of the crap that Bono has said in recent years makes you wonder if he's really a Christian at all anyway.
Yeah,
But for some reason Christianity just latched onto that and everything had to sound like that. And then the other one that came along who was also arguably heavily influenced by YouTube is Chris Martin. And when it was revealed that Chris Martin started out as his dad's worship pastor, well, then it's like, oh, well, now we got to all sound like Coldplay, you
yeah.
know? So that was the other big thing. And I'm like, I was talking to some of my students at school. I'm like, I hate K-Love. I just hate turning it on, and the inane babble between the two hosts drives me nuts.
That's the
But
worst. Other than
that's the
when they're
worst part.
fundraising, it
Yeah,
has to be the worst.
that's the worst. But the other part of it is that every single song has to have some U2 or Coldplay influence, or it just doesn't get played. And it's
Yeah,
like, I would rather just listen to U2 and Coldplay if
yeah.
that's the case. And it's like my gospel list on my phone that I listen to has like Andre Crouch, and it's got like the Blind Boys of Alabama, and it's
Have,
like a
have,
lot.
have you heard Charity Gale?
I've heard the name. I don't know
Oh,
that I've listened.
listen to you. She cranks. She's just like go like it is like
Yeah. Well,
it's
that's why I
like
was so happy when Lauren Daigle came along. Because
yeah,
it was like, here's somebody from Louisiana that's actually doing like gospel music, you
yeah.
know? And it's like, I really enjoyed that. But, and
I'll
when
send you a
David,
Charity Gale that's you're
oh
gonna be
yeah,
like
that'd be cool.
your your engagement into other kinds of Christian music that it's out there will be
I'll be happy.
reinvigorated.
I'll be
Yeah,
happy about
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
when Crowder went and did the bluegrass thing that he
Yeah,
did for a while,
he's a
that was
dude.
pretty cool too,
I
you
like him.
know?
Yeah.
But, okay. All right, people, you have been listening to the Hidden Citadel. Come and
With
join
Randall
us next.
Carlson.
Yeah, right. Come and join
Younger
us.
Dryas.
Younger Dryas. Younger Dryas. Come, come and join us next time as we come up with a new pedal for Josh Scott.
Who knows
come
what
up
it could
with.
be? Who knows?
Who knows? It could be anything. Until then, we will see you later and stay in the Citadel.
This night is coming.
The watchman replies, morning is coming, but night will soon return. Silly.